Hey, so here we are with pre-writing 2. Now you've done your list, so you've thought about your object. And, in the last pre-writing video, I said, you might decide to change your mind once you get to this one. And you might not. But I might go through this pre-writing, you might go, oh man, I have a better idea. That's okay. Again, as long as you've turned in pre-writing 2 to me, or if you're in class, you brought it in and I stamped it, and I'm going to get the grade in the grade book later, that's okay. You don't need to redo it. For me, I do think you should redo that list. Just jot down just to kind of, when you do that, it helps you see your object differently, and it brings up different memories and thoughts that will help you with other things, okay, as we go through. So at this point, we're looking at narrative. And of course, we've read a sample or two and you've seen that everybody's telling a story. And that's all a narrative is a story. And we're born storytellers. I mean, you meet somebody at the grocery store you haven't seen, well, for a day, an hour, right? For a long time. You're like, hey, did you hear about so and so? Or how's your mom? And like, we proceed to tell people our stories, what's going on, right? And so we're born storytellers, and that's something that, and we'll look at, I'll give you some ideas later on, thinking about, how do we use that in more formal ways. But it's something, if you have a familiar essay or personal essay, something that involves some part of that, we can always come back to is telling a story. It's one way to develop your paper more. So if it's appropriate in the paper, and I have many college essays where it was like, use some personal experience. So more than just saying, well, one time I did this and that and I learned this, is if you can really tell that story even a little more, it really helps. And when you think about the essays we've gone through, the ones who are able to tell the story, well, and these are all good examples, right? Where you kind of feel like you're there. They just tell the story. And that's what we're doing. So pre-writing 2 asks you to tell a story. And here, just like with the description, I'm going to give you some tips. And some of those tips are put on your story writing card. Create it as close to the moment as possible and from a personal perspective. Don't say when you walk into my bedroom. That's creepy. I'm your English teacher. I don't walk into your bedroom. Oh, no. When you don't walk into my bedroom, so I wouldn't say when you walk into my bedroom. Oh, creepy. No. Okay, right? No. When I walk into my bedroom. And there's something that happens when we read the I. When we read you, we know that person is talking about us, but we're not as close to it. We're used to, in our mind, we call ourselves I. I did this, I think that, I am this kind of person, I am whatever, right? And so when we read I, even when we know it's someone else, we have this closer association with it. So it's actually something that, we may think that you is actually closer to that person reading it, but actually, if we write I, we are actually putting them in our shoes even better, okay? And the next thing is to show and don't tell as much as we can. Use dialogue. So instead of, well, I'll give an example on the next page. Give onomatopoeia. It's like my favorite word. I had to get it in. It just means if there's a sound, use the sound if you can. If it fits, don't force it, right? So instead of saying my dogs were barking, I could have woof, 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 said my dogs, right? Deep description. Pull readers into that moment. So again, look, I'm filming same day. Not just the orange, but the coffee cup, but the tangerine orange coffee cup, right? Is that tangerine? I don't know. Largely depends upon your screen and my eyes, right? So those things really help. And so I'm going to keep talking about my book, right? And so it's important to me. I let you know. I told you in a sentence. It's very important to me. And then I did all that description, and you're like, wow, she really looked at it, thought about it, smelt it. And maybe there's something there, right? And so it's important because I've told you, I showed you with description. But if I tell you a story about it, it's going to get even better, right? Now, I don't think my writing here is as good as a lot of the student samples we read for two reasons. One, I've been doing this essay for a long time and I've never gotten tired of it. I mean, I've changed other essays out because it's like, yeah, I'm tired of reading that essay or whatever. This one's just so wonderful because it's so unique because we're all different, right? I mean, I don't get the same story. Even if y'all all wrote about a book, Your story about a book's not going to be the same as mine, right? So I love that. So, I wrote this a long time ago, and so I wasn't the writer I am now, right? I've gotten better. And then also, I really think it has to do with my teaching's gotten better. So my students were able to get better even than I was back then. So that's me saying, oh, my writing here kind of sucks, this, that, and the other. See, nobody feels perfect about their writing. So I'm going to shut up. I'm going to turn off the camera. And I'm just going to read this to you. All right? Here's my story that I would put with this book to show you a little bit about maybe why it's important. Outside the English building at New Mexico State University, there's a concrete bench where my friends and I often gather to talk. It wasn't unusual that Amy showed up on that day. In fact, it would have been more unusual if she hadn't. It was unusual, however, that she extended her hand to me and said, "Here." Grasped in her fingers was a plastic grocery bag wrapped haphazardly around something. "It's your Christmas present," she smiled. "Early." I reached through the crinkled bag, smiling at the knowledge that Amy was never good at wrapping presents. At first touch, the woven texture of cloth covering revealed the bag's contents. Before I had pulled the book out, I seemed to smell the dustiness that comes with sitting on a shelf for so long. The binding on the left was an all too bright orange, a remnant of 1929, edged by small wisps of thread loosened over time. The front and back covers were slate blue. I opened the cover and read Elmer Gantry. I lifted the book to my nose, my right hand still between the cover and the title page. There was the chalkiness of dust, the potent age of mold. I saw it, and I had to get it for you. I knew you had to have it. Amy was beaming. This book now stands with others, dusty with age, bearing the scars of abuse where abuse loved. From behind the frayed cloth binding on the outer corners, bland static cardboard peeks out. Between the R and the Y of gantry, the remnant of a price tag or sticker speaks of the book's past lives. I imagine Amy, who inscribed the book to Kelly from Boston's Brattle Bookstore, Amy, standing in between shelves piled high, noticing these details, as I would do when buying a book for her. We, in our different times, see the pages faded to manila, darker around the edges framing the text. We flip through them, looking for evidence of previous owners and something more to share with the past. We feel the coarse texture of the paper, a texture so unlike a new book's slick pages. At the end of the novel are listings of the publisher's other new releases. The novels of Grace Livingston Hill tops a column of titles never read in our English classes. Inside the back, between the cover and the spine, the netting that provides support and creates durability steals out like a lace undergarment. Okay, well, I guess it's not that bad, but I just don't. I don't know. I don't like it as much as I used to. So anyway, we're always our worst critics. So I mean, you can see how I described the book, but I'm also like talking about what Amy and I share. And I did a couple of things. One is first of all, I have to tell you, Amy's very good at wrapping presents now. Okay, she told me if I'm going to keep using this, I have to tell you that. All right. I first wrote this story, and then what I did was I looked back at my list, and there were some places where I'm like, ooh, that description's cool, and it would fit in here. And same thing, I wanted to get in more description of the book, so I actually looked back to my list and fit some stuff in there. I didn't try to get everything from my list in here. That's not the point, right? The list lets you picture it, remember it, think about it. So you may get some wording from your list in here, you may or may not, right? You may find later you want to look back at it and kind of put some more in there or other places in the essay as we move along. You may not, all right? The list is to get you thinking about it specifically and look at it more deeply, and then that helps you as you also think about stories and times with it. So that's your job, is to work on doing a story where you can also get that description in with it. So do a little description. And if you ended up doing your description in sentences, you might just start with a couple of those and go from there. or, your description, if you can describe yourself holding this thing, whether you're actually physically holding the thing or holding it in your mind's eye, that's a great way to do it, right? If somebody gave it to you, like that's what I did, right? Amy handed me the grocery bag, and I described getting it, opening it, and like holding it in my hands because I could remember, I could think about what I did. Okay, so that's a really great way to do it. If it was something that was like your mom's or dad's or somebody's like that and it sat on that shelf, you can describe yourself being that kid and seeing it, or wherever you were, whatever it was. Okay, like I said, everybody's different, so everybody's got a different story to tell. All right, so here are your tips. Tell it simply, step by step. I mean, really, Amy handed it to me. I mean, if you're lost, then think about what's the first thing. And Amy handed me a bag and said, "Here's your Christmas present early." That is literally what happened. So you don't have to fancy it up to make it interesting. That works, right? Because I got Amy's voice. Here's your Christmas voice. I'm saying that, right? So I've got that dialogue, not Amy said, "Here's your Christmas present," but boom, come here. Like instead of mom told me to come here, called my mom. Instead of Amy said, "It's your Christmas present," Amy said, "It's your Christmas present." She smiled early, right? I've got her exact words with those quotes around them to show it, right? Then, those details. Use that I, me, my. Keep it in your, I looked over, I saw this, I heard that. That makes it much more real and much more, that makes that story more vibrant and so much stronger, okay? Those details of what happened. I took it, I opened it, I smelled it, okay? And then, once you kind of do that, or as you do that, don't stop yourself from writing just to go check that list unless you're like, I need to do that. But, you can look at your descriptions from your first writing and say, do those help me get started? Do I want to put any of them in here? Whatever it is. And you can always show yourself or someone else looking at it, holding it, whatever it is. It just depends on your object, okay? So the job here is, now that you've gotten a lot of descriptive phrases and words, it's time to describe it. Set that description and narrative. Prewriting 2, write a story or a couple of stories at the time you remember your object. As you tell that, describe the object. You should have 2 to 3 paragraphs. If you are inspired and you end up with more, oh my gosh, that is so wonderful. Just embrace those moments of inspiration always, okay? If you have to slog to get through 2, just ask yourself, what was the next thing that was happened? What was the next thing I noticed? What was the next thing? And just write that down in a sentence. Then I did that. Then I did that. That's okay if it's that. Remember, later on we're going to hide our work. Right now we're doing the math. So if it needs to be plus this, plus this, plus this, plus this, that's okay. We're just going to get those ideas out of your head, out of your heart, and then later on we can make it sound smoother, okay? So if you're struggling, just say, what was the next thing? What was the next thing? What did somebody say? What did somebody happen? What did it look like? What did I think? Why was it important? Any of those things, who, what, when, where, why, just ask yourself those and you can get that through, okay? So the more you can write for this, the better off you are. But if you come across with 2 or 3 paragraphs, that's good. Again, I'm not grading your grammar. I'm grading, did you follow instructions? Were you thoughtful? I skimmed through these. Are you on topic, right? Did you do this? Did you turn it in on time? Boom, I put a 100 in the grade book. That easy, okay? So again, don't overthink it. Just let it be what it is, okay? So there we go. That's that. Let me know if you have questions, but most of all, just go off and do it and put it out there, and we'll come back to it later when it's time to do that. All right? So take care. Keep on keeping on.